I have watched this game, this sport, for a very long time, man. From the golden eras we nostalgically look back on, to the hyper-analyzed modern game that the younger generation consumes in 15-second clips on TikTok. And let me tell you, there are moments that completely shatter the illusion we see on television. Cristiano Ronaldo just made history. Again. 100 goals in 4 different leagues. Look at the headlines today. Look at your timeline, whether you are a teenager, watching highlights on your phone, or a lifelong fan who remembers his skinny days in Lisbon. Everyone is losing their minds over the numbers. But it's been eating at me. Because if you actually watch the raw footage from that match against Al-Shabaab, if you look closely at what happened in the 75th minute, he doesn't look like a man who just conquered the footballing world. He looks like a man haunted by a ghost. Let's rewind. Let's strip away the polished Instagram graphics, the official club statements, and the sterile tactical breakdowns. Let us go back to the exact moment the ball hit the back of the net. It is the 75th minute. Al-Shabaab is putting up a fight, but Al-Nassr is pressing. Ronaldo makes that signature, intelligent darting run across the face of the defense. The ball arrives, and with the ruthless efficiency of a machine that has been programmed for 2 decades to do exactly one thing, he finishes it. 3-1. In that split second, a historic milestone is breached. England, Spain, Italy, and now, Saudi Arabia. 100 goals in each of these domestic leagues. It is a statistical anomaly that we will likely never witness again in our lifetimes. It is the kind of record that cements a legacy. The kind of number that should theoretically silence every single doubter on the planet. On the exact same pitch, on the exact same night, Joao Felix, a player once heralded as the golden boy of the next generation, scores a lightning-fast, spectacular hat-trick. He scores in the 3rd minute, the 10th minute, and caps it off in the 98th. For any other player, on any other team, a hat-trick is the undisputed headline. But not here. The immense, suffocating gravity of Cristiano Ronaldo's ego and legacy swallows everything in its vicinity. The cameras barely linger on Felix. They immediately pan to the 4-1-year-old veteran. Then though, every major sports outlet is running the exact same narrative. They are mapping out the trajectory to 1,000 goals. They are calculating the remaining 29 goals with forensic obsession. They are talking about his diet, his relentless work ethic, and his unparalleled longevity. They are selling you the story of an invincible conqueror. But nobody is talking about what was actually happening in that stadium. There is a completely different reality playing out in the stands. As Ronaldo turns to celebrate, as the monumental weight of his 100 goal record solidifies, the atmosphere in the stadium is not one of universal reverence. The Al-Shabaab supporters are not bowing to greatness. Instead, they reach for the only weapon they know can pierce his armor. A chant starts. First, it is just a murmur in a small section of the ultras. Then, it spreads like a virus across the stadium. They aren't booing him. Booing is standard. Booing is white noise to a player of his caliber. No, they are chanting a name. A specific, 2-syllable name that has followed him across oceans, across leagues, and across decades. Messi. 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 Every channel is talking about the record. But the real story, the terrifying reality of this moment, is what happens next. The record breaker, the man with 971 career goals, the 4-1-year-old titan of the sport, stops. He hears it, and instead of ignoring it, instead of soaking in the adulation of his own fans, he begins to dance to the mockery. He uses his historic night to sarcastically bounce to the rhythm of his greatest rival's name. That is not a tactical adjustment. That is not a player simply enjoying the game. That is a psychological leak, and it tells us something profound about the heavy, anxious crown he is currently wearing. Now, I want you to look at the footage again. Look at the exact sequence of body language. When a stadium of opposition fans tries to get under the skin of a veteran player, there is a well-established protocol in professional football. You either completely ignore it, letting the sheer weight of your monumental performance do the talking, or you offer a cold, fleeting smirk of absolute superiority. For years, a younger, more explosive Cristiano Ronaldo would explicitly channel that raw hostility. He would score a crucial goal, sprint to the corner flag, point aggressively to his own chest, and scream to 80,000 hostile fans. He would use their hatred as premium fuel to physically and psychologically dominate the opposition. But that is not what happened in Riyadh on this historic night. When the rhythmic syllables of his eternal rival rained down from the Al-Shabaab stands, Ronaldo stopped his celebration. He turned directly towards the section of the crowd initiating the chant, plastered a wide, almost theatrical smile across his face, and began to conduct them. He started bouncing lightly on his toes, swaying his hips, and literally dancing to the specific cadence of the name Messi. Pundits and fan accounts quickly circulated the 15-second clip, with captions praising his newfound maturity. They framed it as an aging superstar finally letting go of his ego, a man who has learned to laugh at the petty, repetitive provocations of his detractors. They sold you the comfortable idea that he is simply enjoying the twilight of his illustrious career, untouched by the noise. That is not relaxation. That is a meticulously constructed defense mechanism. Let us break this down logically, stepping away from the emotional attachments we hold for these footballing gods. There is a fundamental syllogism at play here. First, at 41 years old, on a night where he mathematically achieved a milestone of 100 goals across 4 distinct domestic leagues, he was provoked by the mere mention of his past rival, and he felt physically compelled to react. Second, a man who is truly at peace with his monumental legacy, a man who genuinely believes his statistics have definitively settled all debates, responds to such provocations with profound indifference. The conclusion is unavoidable. This sarcastic dance does not represent the arrogant, unshakable confidence of an undisputed victor. It represents a visible, undeniable crack in his psychological armor. It proves that the ghost of his past remains the single, highly sensitive trigger capable of penetrating his otherwise impenetrable focus. Indifference is the ultimate, undisputed luxury of the truly secure. When you are entirely untouchable, the noise from the stands is nothing more than static. But Ronaldo is fundamentally not indifferent. He remains hyper-reactive. The act of dancing to the mocking chant is an active, conscious, and desperate effort to control an emotional narrative that he feels is slipping away. It is a calculated performance designed to broadcast a very specific message. Look at how much this does not bother me. Yet, the very act of trying so desperately hard to prove that you do not care is, ironically, the absolute proof that you are entirely consumed by it. He is a player who has meticulously engineered every single aspect of his physical existence, his rigorous diet, his optimized sleep cycles, his unrelenting training regime, to completely defy the natural laws of time. He exerts absolute control over everything he can physically touch, but he cannot control the echo of the past. The dance was never truly directed at the Al-Shabaab fans. The dance was a psychological performance for himself. Now, to truly understand the gravity of this moment, we have to look beyond the isolated incident in Riyadh. We have to look at the invisible, crushing weight resting on his shoulders every single time he steps onto the pitch. Nobody is talking about the psychological math of being 41 years old and sitting exactly 29 goals away from the mythical 1-1,000 mark. You look at the physique, you look at the relentless sprinting, and you assume time has not touched him. But time touches the mind long before it breaks the body. Every single game is no longer just a match. It is a ticking clock. It is a desperate race to cement a statistical immortality that absolutely no one, in the entire history of this sport, can ever dispute or take away from him. Let us look at the mathematics of his anxiety. Why is the number 1,000 so critical? Because in the grand, overarching narrative of football history, the ultimate trophy, the World Cup, was lifted by the other guy in Qatar. That is the silent trauma that underscores every single sprint, every single shot, and every single frustrated gesture he makes on the pitch. When the World Cup debate was seemingly closed by public consensus, Ronaldo had to retreat to the only sanctuary where he maintains absolute, undeniable sovereignty, pure, unadulterated goal-scoring volume. 1,000 goals is not just a personal target. It is his final, desperate argument to history. It is the mountain he must build to block out the view of that golden trophy. He is carrying that anxiety. It is the anxiety of the final stretch. And it is precisely in this state of heightened vulnerability that the name of his eternal rival is weaponized against him. This brings us to the secret revelation of the entire narrative, the tragic irony of Cristiano Ronaldo's current reality. We are witnessing a man who has scored 971 professional goals. He has physically conquered England, dominated Spain, conquered Italy, and is now rewriting the history books in Saudi Arabia. He has built a global empire of unprecedented scale and isolated himself in a fortress of unimaginable wealth and statistical supremacy. Yet, despite all of this, the emotional control panel of his mind is still completely held by a man living 7,000 miles away in Miami. Think about the terrifying reality of that power dynamic. Lionel Messi is not in the stadium. Lionel Messi is not playing in the Saudi Pro League. He is not competing for the same golden boot, and he is entirely removed from this specific, localized narrative. But his shadow is so immense. The gravity of their shared past is so inescapably strong that his mere name, chanted by a few thousand opposing fans, instantly dictates Ronaldo's physical behavior. The 100-goal record in 4 leagues was supposed to be the impenetrable armor that protected him from the debate. But the armor is utterly useless against a ghost. That is not a rivalry anymore. That is a psychological haunting. The fans in the stands did not bring Messi into the stadium that night. They simply tapped into an obsession that Ronaldo refuses to let go of. We often frame these chants as cruel provocations by the supporters, assuming they are forcing a narrative onto an unwilling participant. The less generous, but far more accurate reading, is that Ronaldo subconsciously needs the ghost. He has spent 2 decades defining his absolute limits by measuring them against the Argentine. Now, even when he stands entirely alone on a different continent, dominating a completely different league, he cannot process his own greatness without the context of his eternal rival. The sarcastic dance was not him mocking the fans in the stands. It was him arguing with a shadow that he will never, ever be able to outrun. Now, the generous reading of this footage is that Cristiano Ronaldo has finally achieved a state of footballing nirvana. He is 41 years old, defying biological limits on a weekly basis, and he has conquered every major domestic league he has ever stepped foot in. He is operating in a footballing ecosystem in Saudi Arabia that is practically designed to celebrate his every breath. When those thousands of Al-Shabaab supporters started chanting Messi, the generous interpretation is that he simply found the sheer repetitive nature of it amusing. It is the reaction of an elder statesman of the game who has absorbed this exact same provocation in Madrid, in Turin, in Manchester, and now in Riyadh, and has finally decided to just lean into the joke. In this comfortable version of reality, the sarcastic dance is a sign of ultimate, evolved maturity. It is a man subconsciously telling the world, I have 971 professional goals. I just broke another impossible record, and your recycled chants absolutely cannot touch me anymore. The far more accurate one, if you have studied the mechanics of his mentality for 2 decades, is entirely different. Apex predators do not casually play with phantoms. They do not expend valuable emotional energy, choreographing a sarcastic response for an audience they supposedly view as insignificant. You have to understand the fundamental architecture of Cristiano Ronaldo's ego. His entire empire, his entire unprecedented longevity, is built on a foundation of manufactured conflict. He has always needed an enemy to survive, to push his physical limits, to justify the grueling hours in the ice baths and the gym. But what happens when the enemy is no longer on the pitch? What happens when Lionel Messi has effectively removed himself from the intense, day-to-day global club rivalry, opting for a quieter, highly celebrated twilight in Major League Soccer? You are left fighting a shadow. And fighting a shadow is the most exhausting battle a human being can undertake. When Ronaldo hears that specific name echoing around a stadium in the Middle East, it violently pulls him out of his carefully curated kingdom. It serves as a stark, uninvited reminder that no matter how many goals he scores, no matter how quickly he races toward the 1,000-goal milestone, the broader global narrative has irrevocably shifted. The more he tries to publicly demonstrate his unbothered nature through these performative, smiling dances, the more he violently exposes his underlying anxiety. True indifference is completely silent. When you are genuinely unbothered by a rival, you do not acknowledge their name with a choreographed routine on the pitch. He is loudly broadcasting his indifference into the void, hoping it will finally drown out the noise in his own head. But the void is simply echoing back the name of his ultimate rival. That is not a man at peace with his legendary status. That is a man locked in a permanent state of psychological warfare with his own past. So, where does this leave us, man? I look at the calendar. I look at his current scoring rate in the Saudi Pro League, and the math is inevitable. Cristiano Ronaldo is going to reach 1,000 professional goals. It is going to happen. And when he scores that final goal, the entire footballing world is going to stop. The timelines will freeze. The tributes will pour in from every corner of the globe, and we will all be forced to acknowledge a statistical milestone that will probably stand for the rest of our lives. It will be the ultimate coronation. But here is the thought that has been eating at me since I saw that footage from Riyadh. On that day, when he is standing alone on the absolute summit of the mountain, holding the ultimate record, if just one fan in the stadium, or one pundit on television, mentions the name of the guy in Miami, he is still going to hear it. The 1,000 goals won't mute the echo. It never could. This is where I want to hear from you guys. Tell me in the Reddit comments what you actually think. Look at that dance again. Is this the reaction of a man who has finally found peace and is just having a laugh with the crowd? Or is this absolute proof that he will never ever escape the ghost of Lionel Messi? I read every single comment, and I know this debate crosses generations. Whether you grew up watching their prime El Clasico battles, or you are a younger fan tracking their ultimate records today, let me know where you stand. Come back to this video when he finally hits that 1,000th goal, because I guarantee you, the exact psychological tension we are talking about right now is going to dictate how he reacts to it. If this kind of deep analysis, stripping away the PR and looking at the real psychology behind the biggest names in the sport, is what you come here for, hit subscribe. We don't just read the stat sheets here, we read the room. I'll see you in the next one.